Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Subject Matter. I'm your host, Stephen Jenkins, here with your co-host, Mr. Jonathan Dayton, and junior host, Addy Dayton. We are experts in nothing, here to give you our thoughts and opinions on all of it. We're back today, continuing our discussion from last week with Addy and Jonathan about their infertility journey. We just finished up talking about some different struggles that they've gone through, and there's one more question specifically that I wanted to, ask regarding that stuff, and then we'll get to some more of the good stuff. So I think we've talked enough about the things that people say. Was there anything where you felt like someone intentionally said something that they felt was needed, but they knew it was going to make you upset, or anything that you would like to mention in that regard? If there's nothing there that you want to talk about, then we can certainly skip over that. But
I don't know necessarily. I think probably the realest that I needed to hear but still hurt was like my mother-in-law's story. So like it wasn't mean and it didn't hurt my feelings, but like if you know my mother-in-law, obviously he was adopted. They went through IVF and I didn't realize how much they went through to not end up even having a child naturally, to then have to go through more to adopt. Woohoo! Which, don't get me wrong, it's the most...
So glad it failed.
No, it is. It is the most amazing miracle. But, like, hearing her story, I think in my head, I just thought they always, like, we want to adopt. Like, I knew they went through it, but I don't think I really realized...
To what extent?
So I needed to hear it and know that I wasn't alone, but at the same time, it did kind of hurt, if that makes sense. Not that I don't love you, but when you're so passionate about wanting something, I didn't want to have another stage. You were another stage.
Sure.
No, this isn't anything related to your question. However,
Okay.
I'm glad that Addy and I are having a child, and I think we're very excited about that. Not take away from that. However, I am pro-adoption because I was adopted.
100%.
And I think it'd be cool to adopt a child from another country that wasn't from America or from South Korea, so there'd be like a big mix of races in the family.
And that's still cool on our list. But I physically wanted to carry my own baby. And I think a lot of people, this is what a lot of people said. I'm glad you said that. Wanted us to foster or, and I don't think they realized what that would have mentally done on me. Yeah. Because if I was given a child, and I don't think anyone, except probably Jonathan, will know how bad I've wanted a kid my whole life. Like, kids are my life.
And the possibility of taking that away.
It's not that I don't, like, now I would foster in a heartbeat. But I don't think I mentally would have came back or been good help for that child, because every day I just would have been like, well, when am I going to lose my kid? So we're still for adoption. We're still for fostering. But you also have to consider like our own mental health in that. And would we be successful doing that? So I don't think people were rude saying that, but they didn't understand that I knew my own mental health, and I knew I was not going to be able to do it.
Sure. Yeah. If you're not going to be mentally prepared to do something like that, then it's irresponsible to do so for one reason or another, whether or not you think the reason is justified, which obviously in this case, I think it was. But it's unwise to do something when you're going to put a child in that position and you don't know, how it's going to turn out. So for sure. Did you have something else you were going to say, or?
No.
Okay. I was also going to, the final question I'll ask before we get to the good stuff is, with all of the toll and everything that it took, what did you guys do to, continue building your marriage and, getting through those hardships, and whatever way that is, whether it was, counseling, therapy, whether it was just, talking it out, whatever the ways that it was. What is something that you guys did, and what advice would you give to a family who's going through the same thing?
I think I won't speak for Addy because she can answer for herself. However, I think that, therapy was a good thing that she had started. And I think that talking to her counselor is the most valuable thing. And I think anyone that needs to have a counselor or to seek behavioral health out for your mental health de-stressors, whether that's coping at home or talking to someone, I think that you need to do that. However, for me, I think that was just doing what I normally do. I didn't stop my life because this was a hindrance.
You didn't put it on hold.
Yeah. And I don't say this was a hindrance, but it was a roadblock that we had to overcome, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I didn't stop what I was doing. I still went and I worked and did what I do and traveled and spoke across the country and, stayed in school, and I'm still in school, right? Continue to serve on boards and committees. Like, I didn't stop the busyness in my life and what I wanted to do just because we had this roadblock in front of us. It was just part of now my life. that I had to factor in, right, to overcome. So I think that whether you're the wife in the relationship or whether you're the husband, and I do think that opposites do attract, but I also think that most marriages, usually they're not necessarily the same people.
You have to find
right?
some common ground.
Right? But, so I'm not saying that the husband needs to be the one that continues their life, but I think that both, whether one's outgoing and not outgoing, whether that's the female or the male, I think you just need to continue doing what you do and what you want to do, what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the good stuff like this will come in time, but you can't just put things on hold.
So then I'll ask the same thing for you, Addy.
First, I'll say, because we didn't say it in the first episode, and I feel like this is really important. With our infertility story, I was the one that had the health issues, but I think a lot of people look over, and I've learned the importance of, like, male infertility as a thing, too, and secondary infertility.
Huge.
And I think it's important that everyone knows, like, they're not alone in that. I had no clue the numbers were so high. So I just want to, like, put that out there, because my next statement is going to go with that. I think, obviously, like he said, therapy, that's been my saving grace. Journaling, being open. But I, and Jonathan is the same way, like with running fire calls and things like that, I like to help people. And so when I started to become open with my story, I found other people in our community that I had no idea were going through it. And we started a group where we were able to help each other. And it didn't take away my pain, but it made me feel like I had a reason. And that's what I need. I needed a reason to keep going. So I think, like, knowing you're not alone, and even if we don't all have the same story, we all have the same end goal. So that was, like, really important. And I think in our marriage, because just us both making it is great, but we also had a marriage we had to keep alive. And I think the importance was, like what Jonathan said, we realized we're both different, and we coped in different ways.
Very different.
So Jonathan would do very good if, like, a bad appointment day, we could go home and do nothing because that's how I cope. But then the next day, we're going to get up.
That's boring.
And we're going to do something. So, like, he didn't undermine my feelings, but he also didn't just let me never leave my house again. So he found a good even ground for us, and I think that's really important when you're going through anything, is finding that.
Yeah, the other thing that Addy mentioned that I think that we didn't mention yet was the fact that just because it's one person's issue or fault, again, that's not the right words, but condition that you have to go through, the other person's going to have to go through a lot too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned that, taking the toll on the other person, but I'm talking like medically and stuff. If it's the female that has the issue, of course, blood work, and there's a lot of things associated with that. Guys, you're not the hook, because you're still going to have to go through tests and blood work and do things that, you don't want to do as a guy, right? But you have to do it anyway because it's just part of the journey, and you do it, and you don't complain about it, because that's just what you do.
You definitely don't complain.
Everyone in the camera, now, if you're a guy going to, and the same thing if it's the female, right? And the male. I mean, then the male would be scrutinized to other, additional testing and blood work, when the female would be doing, the lesser amount of that, right? But then if you're the lady, right, don't point blame, you just do what you need to do, because there's still going to be tests and things associated with you as well. So it's a two-way street there, and just be prepared, because I mentioned before that it is a journey, but it's a long journey with results, hopefully results, but it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And people, I mentioned Addy, wanting instant gratification on literally everything she does in life. But it does take time. And so you have to, be prepared for that. And again, don't waste your time either sulking in your sorrows when you have also a life to live in a marriage to keep up with.
Sure. So now to get to the good part, you had mentioned last episode that technically speaking, the treatments didn't actually technically
they didn't work.
It's really hard to explain.
No, it's not. It's not hard to explain. IVF was unsuccessful. Chemically had a miscarriage. Miscarriage reset the body to ovulate naturally on its own. Natural pregnancy occurred.
So IVF
did play a part.
It would have, had you not had IVF, the chances are that it wouldn't have happened.
That's where I'm torn. We can sit here and debate medically all day long. We can have Jacob on this episode and talk about this, right? But I don't know. We would never know the impact that IVF had on the natural ovulation and natural pregnancy. We can speculate that without IVF, the body wouldn't ovulate it by itself. It would not get pregnant, but we don't know that for certain. We're never going to know that, and there's really no studies out there to say that this is how.
Right.
I can go to PubMed and search all day long,
to sum things up,
right?
just so that people understand the order of events. You got pregnant through IVF for like a couple weeks or something like that.
So
everyone gets pregnant through IVF. So when the egg and the sperm that are fertilized go into the uterus, technically you can call that pregnancy. Although, really, it's not pregnancy. I mean, the sperm has fertilized the egg and it's inside the uterus, but unless it actually connects to the wall, right?
Right.
It's not pregnancy. But it also has to do a whole lot of other things to constitute a child.
For all intents and purposes, it was just after that you ended up getting pregnant.
They call it a chemical miscarriage. No matter what it is, that's what they call it. So, yes.
And it was just after that then that you guys got pregnant naturally.
Yes. And I will say with IVF, we still have eggs, too, which is a really, I think, important thing.
I'll sell them to anyone. I'm just kidding.
So when you go through IVF, they take your eggs out. Yes. And we were really lucky to have a ton of eggs, actually.
A lot of good ones, too. They rate them on a scale.
Yeah, Jonathan thinks that's cool.
It's like grading football players.
Yeah, that's what
you get an A+, you get a C. No, you're a B-. Yeah.
So if down the road we wanted to have another child and we couldn't naturally and we had to go back to IVF, we still have our eggs frozen, actually. Mm-hmm. So we would skip half the process, which is amazing because that would be the hardest part, was preparing your body and then the egg retrieval, because the egg retrieval is the only time during IVF that you are put under sedation. Is that the word?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good job.
And then even when they're getting you pregnant, you're awake for it, which blows my mind. And, Jonathan could be in there gowned up, and it was the simplest thing ever. I mean, we say simple, you still had to do certain things, but of the process, that'd probably be the easiest.
Oh, it was very simple. I mean, it's not hard. I mean, like I mentioned before, it's a small pipette inserted into your uterus.
Jonathan thought he could do this, ladies and gentlemen.
Dude, I mean, seriously? I mean, there's a lot of things I say.
I wouldn't trust Jonathan.
There's a lot of things I say I can do that I probably shouldn't do, and I'm definitely not qualified to do. But in an emergency, I feel like I would be qualified to do it in an emergency. There would never be an emergency where you need to do that. That's not an emergent procedure. I'm just saying.
How often does this come up on ambulance calls that you're forced to
very
do this?
Very rare. Never. But I feel like, though, I could definitely do it.
But just to say, so we do have other eggs, which is really nice because a lot of people struggle more than once. But now we have this child, which we're so excited about. And whether IVF got us here or not,
that's the
I don't care. I don't think it matters. We're very thankful.
No, it does not matter one bit.
And I think we are even more grateful for this child than we could ever be, if that makes sense, because she was not easy to get. And whether the IVF was leading to her or not, she's still expensive as can be because we still have to pay all those bills. So I think to us, and I think IVF taught me a lot, just about how truly lucky you are to be a parent. And we've always loved kids. We're an aunt and an uncle. I'm a preschool teacher. But now just knowing that this wasn't easy and not realizing how many other people don't get the opportunity, I think it makes us way more grateful for this opportunity, and just that we're not going to take her for granted. She's kind of everything. She is everything we've ever wanted.
I mean, it was definitely worth it, I think, in the long run. And I'm just saying that because I'm medically inclined. I saying the IVF, could have, that's just me. And I would love to, possibly see some studies. And I haven't really done any research to see, what the likelihood is after a failed miscarriage and IVF procedure to, having a child and resetting the female's reproductive system. Although that's interesting for me, but none of you listening to this podcast interest you whatsoever, and that's okay.
Unless Jacob Wilson is watching you. In that case,
So tonight I'm going to go on PubMed and do some research to figure out, the likelihood of all this, and if I can find any researches. But, we are very grateful. I think in the long run, the outcome is what we wanted, regardless of, the process and procedure. And I can't stress enough, though, that it's a journey, an expensive journey, too. I mean, financially, too, for individuals that want to get through this, you're going to realize that it's going to create significant debt. I mean, unless you're, well off, I'm talking well off, and, have a trust fund set aside for you, it's gonna cost you debt-wise, right? And you'll pay the debt for years, and that's just I say cost. It's the cost of, wanting to go through and the IVF process. Along those same lines too, this is just more detail stuff that people may or may not be interested in, but really look at your insurances too, because insurance
That's a good
doesn't always cover IVF. Some insurances do. We've learned that more recently that insurance companies that we have are terrible, right? I'm not gonna call them out, but I'm a small fish in the pond. They wouldn't care, but they're not good at all. And the reason why we're getting new insurance come the first of the year because of the child and just because of all the procedures that we have to go through. But that's also a factor that you need to look at, because if you think that you're just going to go to an appointment and you're going to go through this process, it's not that easy. But two, it takes, lots of questions. You're going to have tons of questions that you need to ask, and you're going to feel like you left an appointment not knowing anything. But I think this goes also back to, where we were to start and where we went to. Both, I think, had great support systems, but I think WVU had an excellent nurse, Holly.
Oh my goodness,
right?
That's important.
That helped us through the process, and without her support and guidance, I think that it would have been even more of a nightmare than, I say nightmare, but it was a good journey, but a nightmare than what it would have been to start with. So yeah, grateful that we're here, regardless of how it turned out and the process that we went through. And
Sure. So now you're pregnant, and you are how many months along now at this point?
7.
Yep,
Seven. Now, I might not be an expert in anything, as we've said on the podcast many times, but you're small for a 7-month pregnant.
I am tiny. She's very big and she's healthy as can be. I just physically cannot keep up. So that's been our biggest struggle. So even when IVF is over and you're pregnant, it's still a nightmare.
But I think what you've told me before too is that with all of the side effects of pregnancy, I'm kind of just going with it because
we are. Right. And again, Jonathan's the calm when I'm panicked. But back to that, my IVF nurse has still been, especially at the beginning of pregnancy, because fun fact, they don't even want to see you until you're 8 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, they don't. It's weird.
So
interesting.
We were 2 weeks pregnant when I found out. Because when you're going through IVF, you're testing all the time anyway. And they're like, "Oh, we'll see you at 8 weeks." That's not going to work for me when we went through all this. So I called my IVF doctor, even knowing that we were on a break because we had just had a chemical miscarriage, and they saw us that week.
Wow.
And she'll still answer questions. They have a portal, and I'll message her and be like, "This is silly," but they want the same outcome at the end for you.
Oh, yeah.
That they don't care it wasn't their process that got us here. If
right.
we're going with, we can't point fingers. So even once we have the baby, they're like, "Please bring her back." They've been a huge support, but now we are this far along. I'm tiny. I'm pretty much just jelly.
I hope it wasn't an insult for me to say that.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, because I still feel huge, so.
Okay. So you're having a girl.
Yes.
Which I predicted, by the way.
He's really good at that, guys.
I'm 10 for 10, in fact.
You should pay for that service. You should put a service out there, service.
Just a sidebar. I am 10 for 10. I've guessed 12 babies, and I've been correct 10 out of 10 times, which I believe is one out of...
Where'd the other 2 go?
Huh?
Where'd the other 2 go?
The twins?
Huh?
Were there
what?
Twins?
You said I guessed on 12 babies.
I said 12?
Yeah.
You said there's been 12 babies, and I've been right 10 out of 10 times.
I've guessed
oh my gosh.
10. I almost said it again. I've guessed 10 babies, and I've been right. 10 out of 10.
Was there twins that you guessed correctly?
Nope. No, it was 10. I don't know where the word 12 came from.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's 1 out of 1,024, I think, chances. Just a little sidebar for me to, get my word in. Yeah, so what are the plans? Do you have a name yet?
No, we have names.
We have names.
Okay.
But Jonathan, being the husband that he is, has decided we're going to see the baby first.
Okay.
Before we do this. Now he's shaking his head because the amount of stress it's given the family is stressing me out.
I think it would be nice to, see the child and then choose one of the pre-selected names that we already have for the child. And it's not like we're not going to really change one of our top 2 or 3, but it's not like we're going into the, delivery room without anything at all. The child is going to have a name when she's born, and so we're not going to wait weeks on end to give her a name.
We just can't label anything.
I understand. So you don't have to say the names that you have selected if you don't want to. But we are going to say, put down in the comment section any names that you want to suggest.
Yeah.
Steven is a great name. Make sure you spell it with a PH.
It's Stevenette.
Stevenette. Stevenette.
I thought it was
yeah.
hamburger.
Because it is a girl, so I don't know why I said Steven. Yeah, Stephanie. Yeah, there
that
you go.
seems much better.
Yeah, Stephanie Hamburger Dayton. That's the way to go. So yeah, no, have you? Because you said you have all the pregnancy stuff, but has it been, for lack of a better way to put it, everything that you hoped in terms of just getting ready to prepare and the gifts and stuff? And I don't know, you haven't had your baby shower yet, or has it been?
I think it's really fit our IVF story. I feel like our whole pregnancy has been complicated on top of it. And so, but at the same time, there's like little parts of pregnancy that are like the coolest thing. Like her kicking, which Jonathan thinks is weird. It is weird.
It is weird.
It is weird. But
no one ever said, "Oh my goodness, this baby's kicking me. Let me feel it." The only people I've ever heard say
there
that
are a few people that I've heard say that
are females. I've not heard a guy yet go, "Oh my goodness, this is so cool. I need to go feel my wife's stomach, or this baby's kicking. I need to feel it kick." It's not that exciting. I don't understand the fascination.
He thinks
it's not exciting.
Interesting.
It's not exciting at all.
I think I would be interested at least.
To put your hand over your heart and feel your heart pump. It's the exact same thing, except it's in the stomach.
I can't. Not currently having a pregnant wife myself, cannot speak for sure, but I don't feel like I'd agree.
No, it's not.
With that statement.
It's not the sweet moment
It's
I thought
the
we were
same.
gonna have. I will say that.
Okay.
But I do think like some of the things are neat. Like we started getting like some gifts in and stuff like that, and like kind of to end it, but I think it's perfect. Is going on our journey. The amount of people that followed us.
Yeah, it's exciting and cool.
And are still following us and encouraging us. Like they didn't just like, oh, okay, they're pregnant now. Like we've got like boxes in our like sent to our house and like cards, and just like the encouragement hasn't stopped. So even though it was really like a hard journey, we gained a ton of like our baby is so loved, like worldwide loved. So like our baby shower's not yet, but our house is still full of like pink and glitter. Well, our house is full of junk, but that has nothing to do with this podcast.
Does this podcast have anything to do with anything at this point?
Addy's junk.
Yes, I need to get rid of junk.
We always have sidebars and stuff. So yeah, that about wraps it up. Thank you guys for watching. This will be airing on Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas, everybody. We will see you next week for the live stream, and we will have some, hopefully by the time that this airs, we will have released some information on social media regarding specifics and everything to expect, times and all that. So make sure you tune in, ask some questions. Should be a fun night. It's a live stream, so bear with us. It's our first one. We won't have. I have some testing that I'm going to do, but
too.
I need a cut thing.
Yes,
Objectors thing.
we'll have Addy here monitoring some comments and some fun stuff. So
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody! Don't forget the reason for the season, and we don't have an outro, so we'll see you later.